Today we cancel, probably not for the first time, mid-tier squad member Rashida Tlaib. We last saw Rashida in an interview on Axios explaining why all federal prison inmates, including sex traffickers and child rapists, should be immediately released from prison. The idea she was hawking on the House floor this week last week isn't quite as bad as that, but it's almost as bad. It's a bit more mainstream anyway, and that is student loan forgiveness. But the interesting thing about Rashida's pitch for student loan forgiveness is that she is herself a perfect example of why we should not forgive student loans. Listen for yourself.
I worked full time, Monday through Friday, and took weekend classes to get my law degree, and still close to $200,000 in debt. And I still owe about $70,000. And most of it was interest. Most of it was our own government making money and profit off of me. And guess what? I didn't go to the for-profit entities. I went to legal aid. I worked at the nonprofit organization fighting for, the right to breathe clean air, to fight for the worker that was getting their wage, taken and stolen from their employer. I went and worked on immigrant rights and so much more. And all of that to say, we have to stop treating as if folks that are paying for education, as if they bought some bougie car or some big, something beyond that. No. They were seeking an education.
Okay, so Rashida Tlaib wants debt forgiveness, and she complains that she still has $70,000 left on her loan, which was originally $200,000 for her law degree, she says. A degree that she's chosen not to use. She admits that she immediately took that degree that cost her well into six figures to attain and went off to be an activist at a nonprofit. Now she's a politician. Fortunately for her, she makes $175,000 a year in her current job, which raises the question, why should the taxpayer assume her debt when she earns an income more than double the national average? The fact that elected representatives earn more than double the national average is a separate issue entirely. I mean, I think that they should get paid. They should get paid the national average income. That's what I think. For now, though, the point is simply that she chose the most expensive education path possible. Now she rakes in a sizable salary and yet still insists that the taxpayer fulfill her financial obligations for her. The appropriate response to that argument is no. Pay your debts, you damned deadbeat. Now, I'm glad that Rashida Tlaib has wanted to make herself the face of this issue because she is the face of it. As an affluent upper-class brat with a graduate degree, she does indeed represent a large portion of the people clamoring for debt forgiveness. In fact, people with graduate degrees account for half of all student loan debt. Half. That's because the average amount of student debt for bachelor degrees is only about $30,000. Not insignificant, but manageable. The way that we get into trillions of dollars collectively in terms of debt is through all of these people getting master's degrees where the average debt is $70,000 and law degrees and medical degrees where the average debt is $150,000 and $200,000 respectively. So when you hear about debt forgiveness, just know that half of that money that will come from the taxpayer, from you, will be going to upper-class, affluent, highly educated doctors and lawyers and so on. Student debt forgiveness is upper-class welfare. That's what it is. You're looking for a great Christmas gift for yourself or for someone else, Kamikoto knives are the way to go. Kamikoto makes great Japanese steel kitchen knives using traditional techniques from Japan. Kamikoto taps into more than 800 years of traditional techniques from Honshu, Japan. Kamikoto also only uses steel sourced from mills in Japan, and each blade is crafted using techniques that have been honed and perfected by generations of knife smiths. I feel powerful holding these blades in my hand. Each knife comes in a beautiful, heavy-duty ashwood box, which you can see right here. I'll try not to stab myself in the face as I point the box up. And make sure that the knife is stored safely. It also makes Kamikoto a great gift. Each Kamikoto knife goes through a rigorous 19-step process that takes several years from start to finish to complete. Our expert bladesmiths forge and shape raw steel into hardy blades, polishing and sharpening them to an excruciatingly fine edge. Each knife is individually inspected. Kamikoto is so confident about their knives that each knife comes with a lifetime guarantee. Because of their single bevel edge, you can look at those very sharp edges. Kamikoto knives can achieve an unbelievably sharp edge that you just can't get with other knives. They can cut through ribeye like butter. Kamikoto knives are used by several chefs working at Michelin star restaurants. So click the link below or go to kamikoto.com/Matt Walsh and use promo code Matt Walsh to save an extra $50 off today. Of course, I realize that plenty of people with graduate degrees are not doctors or lawyers. Some of them are not getting paid well at all. The 2 years master's degree programs are largely useless. an enormous scam. And many people today are walking around with graduate degrees that serve no purpose whatsoever, and there's been no return on investment. Contrary to Tlaib's claim, they are indeed basically getting a bougie car, those graduate degrees. They're superfluous, extravagant, useless, showy. At least you can drive cars. You can't do anything with most of these graduate programs. But even so, who should be on the hook to pay for your superfluous and useless graduate degree? You or your neighbor? Really, if we wanted to talk about debt forgiveness for the middle class, for average working class Americans, we'd be forgiving mortgages or credit card debt or car payments. That's the kind of debt that most people deal with. Most of us don't have a $200,000 slip of paper sitting in a frame and hanging on a wall in our office. Maybe the student debt forgiveness proponents, though, would say, sure, yeah, let's forgive all that debt too. But that only proves that they're a bunch of mental children. They have no understanding of or appreciation for the financial realities of life. They think a magic wand can be waved to solve all these problems, even as the government's magic wand that it waved over the last 2 years has led to skyrocketing inflation and an economic situation that's even worse than the one that these measures were supposed to solve in the first place. When it comes down to it, this is, again, a question of who should be responsible for the debts that you take on. If you enter into a contract and agree to pay X amount for Y product or Y service, who should be the one to hold up your end of the bargain? And there are only two possible answers to that question: you or everybody else. You might prefer the latter option, everyone else, but it's not justifiable on a logical or moral or financial basis. I'm sorry if you went to get a master's degree so that you could teach the ABCs to first graders. I'm very sorry that such a terrible decision has caused you heartache. I am. But my well of sympathy dries up the moment you turn to the government and ask it to point its guns at me and reach into my wallet to solve your problems. You immediately go from being a sympathetic yet silly figure to a thief. Now, all that said, I do agree that our approach to higher education is untenable. And that's why I think we need to evaluate that approach rather than simply trying to get rid of the debt while leaving the fundamentally broken system still in place. Okay, so this again, like we talked about with the left, this is just like solve the homeless crisis by putting all the homeless in hotels. Yet they're still mentally ill drug addicts. So we solve our broken higher education system by just forgiving all the debt, but the system is still broken. The solution to the debt crisis going forward, the way to staunch the bleeding anyway and make sure it doesn't get worse, is to stop sending our kids into four-year institutions by default. Most of them don't need to be there and won't gain anything of lasting value from the experience. If there was a massive drop-off in enrollment, and we encouraged our kids to be more discerning about the choice to enroll in college, and we pushed them to explore other options aside from four-year institutions, then many of these problems will begin to sort themselves out. Colleges, for one thing, wouldn't be able to charge Lamborghini prices for degrees if they had to compete not just with each other, but with the whole array of other options that the world presents. If only people would explore them before signing up for the college path. That's the point that Rashida Tlaib ignores, or outright rejects. She wants to keep the spigot turned on, siphoning millions of kids into the university pipeline, whether it will benefit them or not. Only she wants the government to be even more involved in funding and facilitating the whole disastrous system. So as usual, she has it all exactly backwards. And for that, she is canceled. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.